Eltън, this has been such a busy and exciting year for you with projects on screen, stage, the tour. Why did you decide this was the best time to put out your memoir?
Actually, it was probably David's idea. David put this 5-year plan together in France a few years ago, saying, what do you want to do now you have children? Do you want to be traveling for the rest of your life? And I said, no. So we put this tour together, or he put the tour together. And in amongst that was the film and the book. And we thought, once the film comes out, it would be good to keep the momentum going by having the book coming out about 5 months later. So that's why. But you're right, it has been the most incredible year. And all good stuff. The tour is just off the chart. I'm having such a great time. We've done 126 shows already. We have another probably 230 to go. But I'm loving it. And then the film was a huge success. I was so proud of the film. And I'm proud of the book. I'm so proud of the book.
You've always been something of an open book. You've given very candid interviews. The movie is very personal. Yeah. But this is next level, the book. What would you
this
say
is the next level. I mean, the movie was a fantasy with elements of truth in it, of course. And I wanted to show the tough ride of being a successful artist and how I went through tough times and how I came out at the end and got my life together. This starts at the very beginning. It's the story of my life up to the present day, warts and all. And I tried to make it funny and interesting so that people weren't bogged down with too much music stuff and too much intricate stuff. I could have written a book that was probably 4 times as long because there's so much I've left out. But I just wanted to encapsulate everything I've been through.
You talk about the humor. The book is very funny. People who know you, it's not the biggest surprise because you're funny to be around. So how much of that was surprising to you, how humorous it turned out, and how much of it was you trying to make it that way?
I think I wasn't trying to make it that way. I've just seen so many funny things have happened to me. I wanted to make, there's so much heavy stuff in the book. There's so much emotional stuff that it's good to include some things that are funny. And there's some laugh out loud things in the book. Because my life is, I've always had a good sense of humor, and I've always think that humor gets you through the bad times. And without laughing, there is nothing.
How hard was it for you to find the time to work on this? It was time consuming.
I did it with Alexis Petridis, who's a friend of mine who writes for The Guardian. He's the chief music critic. I've had so many biographies written about me that aren't true, and they don't. How could they be? They don't know me. I've never let anybody have any access to me. So I'm not having a go at the biographers. But if you don't have access, you're not going to write the real stuff. So I decided to choose Alexis because he's one of the funniest people I've ever met and writes the funniest blogs and emails. And I started taping with him about 2 years ago. And I thought, oh God, how am I going to do this? Am I going to remember anything? It was a bit like when I went into rehab. They said, write. And I said, I don't know, I can't remember. When am I going to start? Well, we started in 1975. We started at the Dodger Stadium concert. It was a good place to start because my life was really crazy then. It was the peak of my career at that time. So we started there. If I'd have started the childhood stuff, I think it would have been harder. So we started at the more frivolous side of things, even though they were quite heady, and I was in the swimming pool trying to kill myself 2 days before Dodger Stadium. But it was, it was craziness. And then we went back to the beginning. And it's amazing how much I can remember. I was prompted by so many friends, Tony King especially. Do you remember this? He had diaries. I had diaries. My diary was, there's a bit in there about got up, tidied the house, bought a Rolls Royce, had dinner, wrote Candle in the Wind, had dinner with Ringo Starr. That was one day.
You're very kind of objective in a way about some of your more idiosyncratic parts of your manner. If you have a short temper or you're yelling at the fact that there's wind outside the hotel room. Was it fun to kind of take a step back on those parts of your personality and almost make fun of them?
It's good to make fun of them. It's awful to realize what you've been doing. I do have a short temper, as you know. But David is very stoic and very calm. So if we have an argument, he's very rational and I'm going, ah! And it's really annoying because that is a part of my personality I do not like. It's gotten better, but it's still there. And I inherited it from both my parents. And it's good to make fun of it, but it's kind of awful. I'm glad I admit it because it is part of, as you said, my idiosyncrasy. I'm very impatient, and that's who I am. So you might as well admit it, and then it reads funny, but it isn't funny, if you know what I mean.
Right. There's one motif that I really noticed a lot, and it's the idea of serendipity and things that happen in your life in these really kind of fateful ways. Of course, the big one is Ray Williams giving you the envelope with Bernie Taupin's lyrics in it. Do you think back on that day a lot? And if so, what do you really remember about it first and foremost 50 years later?
I can't understand how I had the balls, to be in a band, and I was very, very shy. I didn't have much self-esteem. I was quite tubby, but I was so fed up with playing music to people that didn't listen. And I answered that advertisement, not knowing what would happen. But it was, again, serendipity said, go for it. And looking back on myself, I don't know how I did it, because I was so shy. But I'm determined to do something other than this. And then to go there, and to have the courage to walk through the door when you're shaking with fear. And then for Ray to be very sweet and nice to me, and then give me that lyric of all the envelopes. It's crazy. My life would be totally different. It would have changed. I wouldn't be. It's crazy to think about it. It's kind of very spooky, but it's happened to me at least 4 or 5 times in my life where things like that have happened, where I've made a decision and it's changed my life.
You talk a lot in the book about the songwriting process and how you're almost bewildered by how much it works.
Well, that's serendipity too, because, I mean, I get a lyric, I go into another room, I sit at the piano and I look at the title, I read the lyric through, and as I'm reading it, a little movie appears, like when I was a kid reading a book. And I grew up in the 50s, so there was no television. I just, there was the radio, and you used to hear plays on the radio, and you would imagine it in your imagination. It was so great to be a kid and just use your imagination. And that's exactly how it works with Bernie's lyrics. By the time I get to the end of the lyric, if I really like it, I know what tempo it's going to be. I have kind of guessed what kind of genre the music might be. And then I put my hands on the keyboards. I have no preset ideas. I don't write a chord sequence first. The lyric is always first. Then I put my hands on the keys, and then a chord sequence will appear. And if it all comes together and it's 45 minutes later, I have a song, or maybe even quicker, I don't know. But that is serendipity. That's extraordinary. How does that work? And it's been the same way from the word go to the present day. And I get excited because I don't know what lyric I'm going to get. I don't know what's going to happen when I put my hands on the keyboard. So it keeps the process incredibly fresh.
And one thing that I've always been so amazed by is the speed at which you write these songs. But one thing that opened my eyes a lot in the book was that you talk about the fact that you really did put a lot of work in as a kid and as a young adult, playing and learning and performing. So you've kind of already done all the work, and that helps us understand why the songs come fast.
I paid my dues. I played by ear when I was a young kid. I was told to have lessons, which I did too, maybe kicking and screaming, but I enjoyed them. I learned to play Mozart, Chopin, Beethoven, Bach, all the great, wonderful composers. I went to the Royal Academy of Music. I made friends who later played on my records and produced my records, again, serendipity, and arranged my records. And then I went on with my band. I drove up and down the whole of Britain, playing in terrible places to 35 people. I backed Patti LaBelle, I backed Lee Dorsey, I backed Major Lance, Billy Stewart. I watched great artists perform. I noticed how they performed, So by the time I became Elton John performer, I had a hell of a lot of experience. It's the classic thing of paying your dues, but it's experience. So that when I got to perform, I wasn't learning from scratch. I had all those years of experience behind me to know, and be me instead of being a backing singer, a backing organ player. But it helped, the hard work. I get very frustrated and sorry for people who become, television stars like on X Factor and places, and they haven't had that experience, and they're just thrust into the spotlight. They have no idea of putting a show together. They don't know what it is, and it's really difficult that way. I learned the proper way.
You talk a lot about the thrill of performing and why it keeps you at it decades into your career. Can you talk about what it feels like to walk out onto a stage when there's 100,000 people there to see you?
It's extraordinary. I mean, it's electric. I mean, it never gets old. I'm always very impatient to get on stage because I never go on stage late. I just love to get out there, and I'm raring to go. And that's because I've always loved, even when I was doing a lot of drugs, I still carried on playing music. I still carried on making music, recording music, because it's been my touchstone of my whole life.
Whether it's Madison Square Garden or another venue, what would you say is kind of your number one on-stage moment? Something that you did at a show, or something that happened at a show that is the pinnacle for you?
I would have to say the John Lennon, without question. I mean, there's been so many wonderful things that have happened to me on stage. But him coming out on Thanksgiving 1975 at Madison Square Garden, when he hadn't appeared in New York since Shea Stadium with the Beatles, he had only appeared on stage at the Peace concert in Toronto. And he was so nervous, he threw up. And we were doing 3 songs together. And he came out to probably the most touching ovation I've ever heard for anyone, that we all shed a tear on stage. A, because we were playing with John, but B, because the love from the audience. He was an adopted New Yorker, and he was there, and they just loved him. So did we, but they loved him. And so I would have to say that's one thing. I'm getting tingles as I talk about it now. I'll never forget that.
The last 2 words of the book, which are so appropriate, are what's next.
Yeah.
You're always looking forward.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you want to end that book? Why did you want to end the book that way, and what do you think is next?
I don't know what's next. I mean, if you look at and read that book, my life has been an extraordinary passage of events. And serendipity has played a huge part in that. It's played a part in me meeting Bernie, meeting David, having children. And I don't know what's next, and I don't want to know what's next. If you'd have asked me in 1967 what's going to happen next, and you'd have told me what my life had mapped out, I mean, who could have written this story? It's been extraordinary. I never set out to be who I was, but I'm glad I made the decisions to go for it. I've had the most incredible life with lots of ups and lots of downs, but it's all up at the moment. And you know me, I'm always looking to the new thing, whether it's new music, new photographs, new movies, new books. It's all about the new for me. I know the old, and I love the old. I know you love the old because you do Turner Classic Movies, and it's great, and I love the old so much. But it's all up here. What I'm more interested in is if I hear someone like Sam Fender or Billie Eilish making music when they're very young, and thinking, oh my God, I wish I could have done this. Right. I wish I had that talent. So it's all about, what's coming up, what's next. Who knows? That's what life's about. If you're lucky, as I am, to have lived the life I have, and I'm blessed in what I have, and the most incredible children, a husband, a career, all the things I could possibly want, I just want the unknown.